Ready, set, go.
Welcome to The Sweet Spot, an Updog podcast. I'm Andrea Morissette.
And I am Jack Bailey, and we are your co-hosts today.
And today we have an expert on our board, so I'm very excited to welcome Dr. Kathy Topham to our board today. Woo woo!
Hey, Kathy.
Kathy is one of our very loyal Updoggers and one of our players that has been really since the very beginning. You've been involved in Updog, and she's a vet that specializes in sports injuries and stuff like that. She has so much information about that, and that is such an exciting topic for me because I have had sport dogs for a long time and they're going to incur injuries, and so we're really, really grateful to get to pick her brain today about some of her expertise in that topic. But first, we want to learn a little bit more about you, Kathy. So before we dig into the meat of the podcast, let's hear about you. So we want to know about you, your dogs, where you live, where your club, any of that kind of stuff. Ready, go.
Any of that kind of stuff. Okay. I've been a veterinarian for a very long time. The sports medicine thing is my latest iteration of a profession. I've been doing this for about 20 years. Before that, I was a zoo vet, which is a other no podcast that we could talk forever. I got lots of stories. I have currently 6 dogs, and they all compete in something in some degree or fashion. Not all of them are meant to be Frisbee dogs. My home club is Doggone It down in Seville, Ohio. I live about an hour north of there.
All right. So, Kathy, let's kind of jump into things a little bit here. And I figured let's start from the start, meaning if I have a young pup, let's say, or a dog that maybe I was watching ESPN too, and I saw, the AKC Disc Dog Challenge, and I was like, hey, that looks like a lot of fun. I'd love to do that with my dog. What are some things that you would hope that somebody would be thinking about prior to even playing the sport of disc dogging? Like, what should they be doing in terms of like preparing their dog physically, preparing their dog with skills? Talk to us a little bit about that.
So, yeah, I'm a big fan of conditioning. I'm a big fan of cross training. Back when I was first taking the rehab classes and learning how to be a physical therapy veterinarian, we talked about dividing our training into 4 pieces. And piece number 1 would be skill training, of course, teaching your dog how to catch the Frisbee, teaching yourself how to throw the Frisbee, et cetera, et cetera. You should also focus a little bit on what you can do to strengthen your dog's muscles. That should be a whole separate component of your training program. And then endurance, because a lot of things that we do, in addition to Frisbee, take a lot of endurance. And then that last little piece we call proprioception, which is kind of a body awareness section. When you're developing a training program, it doesn't mean that you have to do each piece individually. There's a lot of things that cross over. Taking a dog for a hike in the woods is going to basically practice everything but skills.
Every one of those, yeah.
Right. It's going to get every one of those. And, for all of these conditioning programs that have developed over the years and all the equipment that people are, we're all very equipment heavy now. We have to have the physio balls and the fit discs and all that. In reality, the best thing you can do for your dog is take an off-leash walk out in the woods somewhere.
And that's enrichment too. Like not only for the body part, but man, that brain part makes such a big difference for them. Like soundness, when they have pressure of having to perform or compete, like there's pressure there for everybody, the dog as well. That part, that enrichment part really can make a dramatic difference in their performance. Yeah,
it really does. It helps with their resilience. It helps with their impulse control. And that includes, it in all honesty should be part of your cool down. When you have a warm up and cool down, part of your cool down should be addressing the mental stress and being able to blow off some of that adrenaline. And, but that's another topic, probably for another day.
You could do 3 of these or 4 of these. That's
easily.
I love hearing that though, that you don't have to spend a bunch of money on a bunch of equipment. And that I love hearing that the best thing is just getting out there and going on a vigorous hike with your dog. That's cool.
And the money
and it's best for both of you. Fresh air, You know, you're getting exercise as well as your dogs. That being said, you know, I've accumulated over the last 20 years most of the pieces and parts of equipment training. You know, living in Northeast Ohio, I don't always have access to outside, and I have rules about, you know, not running with my dogs when it's 35 degrees and wintry mixing. Yeah, and it's icy out. So I've accumulated some of the toys, but for me, they're extras. They're not as important as, in my mind, making sure that my dog is achieving some level of success on different surfaces. You know, when we play Frisbee, for the most part, it is outside, but how many times have we had to go inside and all of a sudden the dogs are like, I've never been on turf before. Yeah, I don't know.
Running into walls.
Yeah. Wait, if the Frisbee bounced off the wall, I can just stand here and wait for it, you know?
Yeah.
So addressing all of those things in your mind doesn't mean that you have to like set a watch and say, oh, 25% of my time today is going to be spent just on Frisbee. It's more just setting it in your mind to make sure that you're addressing all the components.
That's a really interesting point that I think is very relevant to our players. We have a lot of people up in the north area, and 3-4 months out of the year, especially in our Canadian area, we've got like 6 months out of the year where they really can't play outdoors. And I have some students that are doing pretty high level freestyle indoors in the winter. And I tell them all the time, the collection is entirely different. You're playing on horse stall mats.
Yeah.
Like they're slippery. You go from mat to grass, your dog is getting completely different. They are not prepared to play on grass. They're going to have way too much power, way too much speed. They're not going to be able to control themselves. So like that is a really good point when you're switching from indoors to outdoors or you're doing different types of play. That is the proprioception.
Absolutely.
Like, pushes off differently from a slippery surface versus from the grass. And they need to be able to switch that in their brain. But if you don't ever put them through that exercise of them being able to make the adjustment from a smooth floor, slick floor to a grassy or a grippy floor, then the dog has more risk of slip injuries and stuff like that.
Right, right. And along with that, I know that this sounds really funny, but I'm also extremely opinionated about toenails. Because that can make a huge difference in dogs' proprioception because they get so much information through the bottoms of their feet. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we need to address is longer nails, because when those nails, especially on the front feet, are a little bit long and they're actually coming in contact with the surface, that bending up is actually sending information to the brain that says, hey, you're going uphill. And it turns on like all the mobilizer muscles. And the dog can be standing still. So that means all their stabilizer muscles are engaged. Well, now you're telling the brain, stabilize, mobilize, stabilize, mobilize. So that mismatch that goes up into your brain, that neural mismatch, can create tiny little slips or tiny little mistimings in stride and breakover and those sort of things.
Micro tears, right? Little micro tears.
Right. And I know it sounds like such a stupid little thing, but addressing toenails for a sport dog in particular is really a huge thing. It's huge.
So Kathy, are you saying, just so I understand, are you saying that the toenails, like, then they shouldn't be, you don't want them to be longer because you don't want them to be sending that incorrect data to the brain?
Correct.
Okay.
By the same token, you don't want, and I won't pick on any particular breeds that like to trim the nails back to that cat paw.
Yeah.
I won't pick on a breed, but we all know who I'm talking about, right? They have a hard time as well because they've got nothing to grip with.
Can't use it.
So finding that fine line, you know, like when the dog is standing, their toenails probably should not, when they're standing with a relaxed paw, they should not be touching the ground. Right. But as soon as they want to dig in, they have to have something to use.
Yeah. I
mean, it's a valuable tool, but we don't want that neural mismatch in our sport dogs.
All right. Let me make a note. Order Dremel. Got it.
1 to 2 weeks, right? Yeah. That brings up another interesting point that we didn't actually have on here yet, that I am always really interested in, is dew claws and rear dew claws, and the dogs those in dog sports. So for me, I always want to keep them on, not the rears, but I would want to keep the fronts on. And they do incur injury sometimes, but their thumbs, man, my thumbs have had injuries too, and I don't want to chop them off.
It's a risk-benefit ratio. Yeah. And I know that 20 years ago, everyone was still taking dew claws off pretty routinely, but I think that the tides have changed. I think that there is enough research out there. Dogs without dew claws do risk slippage. They do actually risk pretty severe arthritis in their old age because how they've had to reuse their feet in a completely different way, and they get arthritis in their toes, they get arthritis in the wrists, and it's pretty pronounced. I mean, since I've been doing this now for 20 years, I've now seen a couple generations go through, and I see the difference in these 10, 11, 12-year-old dogs that don't have dew claws compared to the ones that do. And
just imagine if you had to go through your whole life without a thumb, how much more additional impact that would put on these outside digits for balance and corner. They're not,
and those are the ones that get really arthritic too. Those are the ones that you'll see on, and I won't name any breeds, but the really high drive, black and white kind of dogs. This digit just gets huge. This knuckle gets huge, and it's overuse. It's chronic overuse.
All right, I'm playing the part of the novice person that doesn't know anything because I'm a novice person that doesn't know anything. So Kathy, the dew claws, because I find this interesting. So what is the biological or evolutionary or whatever? What is the purpose of that dew claw?
In us, it is very much prehensile, but in most species, it's not, and it is an oppositional force. That's why they can spread, and they can plant and make their foot wider. And I'll go back to like monkeys, when they started gripping branches, and then they came out of the trees and came out of the ground. We're getting into evolution. How did that happen?
But where it goes.
it really does help with traction because it spreads the foot into a wider base.
Okay, great. That makes sense. All right, Dre, any more comments on that first question?
Well, she did allude into another one of our questions, so I'm going to jump a couple of ones forward.
Perfect. Yep.
One of the questions that I just added, Kathy, is something I dealt with a lot as a full-time performer, because there's a lot of wear and tear on my dogs. They have a lot of mileage when they're performing shows. And so one thing we have to be really careful of is overuse. And I see I see a lot of overuse injuries in casuals or competitors as well, because they don't know. And they don't know the impact of that long term until they get to the point where their dog's 11, 12, 13, and then they're starting to see the results of that. So as an expert, can you talk to us a little bit about overuse injuries, how they're kind of caused, and then what we're going to start seeing? Because I know for me, if I see a bicep strain, I know exactly where that's from. I know exactly what that's coming from, and I know exactly how to deal with that, right? As a Frisbee dog person. I've seen that several times. A lot of people see a lot of rear injuries, iliopsoas type stuff. So
absolutely,
there's some common overuse type injuries.
I guess understanding this is really getting into the meat of this, right? In understanding how injuries occur to begin with, and we can divide that into three categories. If a dog has to perform a function while it's imbalanced, which kind of alludes to structural defects. If it's impaired in some way, as in on a false surface or unstable surface or faulty equipment, etc., and chronic overuse. Those are really the three main ways that dogs occur injuries. The body has this infinite capacity for healing, and it can heal from injuries that occur from daily wear and tear, or it can heal from an injury. There's not enough capacity to do both at the same time. So bearing in mind, if you want to get into the structure, we can, but let's get into that chronic overuse. Yeah. This is the number one enemy of just about every injury I see. And you talk about biceps tendon strains, chronic overuse, iliopsoas, chronic overuse. There is the rare and occasional, oh, my dog slipped and something happened. But if your dog's fit and in good condition, they should be able to handle minor slips, minor twists, landing on one leg every once in a while, twisting in the air. They should be able to handle that because they're in condition. But when you do it over and over and over again, it's just like a paperclip, metal. You take that paperclip and you bend it. Eventually it bends and it breaks. Can you say what the body is the same way?
Yeah, say what you said again earlier, because I really want you to send this home. The body has the capacity to heal from
day-to-day wear and tear.
Or an injury.
or an injury that they've incurred, it can't heal from both.
Oh.
So if your dog has a minor strain and you continue to play, it's going to become a major strain because the body isn't able to heal itself from both things at the same time.
Yeah. And I think one of the major things that I see, I learned about doing rehab properly because I had sport dogs.
You have to, right? It's a part of your life.
That's it. That dog's done, retired. If I do not properly do rehab, the dog's done. So like I learned the importance of rehab, but I see it so much in my students. They don't give their dogs enough rest off of an
Correct.
injury and they go back into play too soon and it becomes a recurring injury. So one of the things I wanted to just allude to or get your feedback on, let's say your dog tweaks a shoulder just a little bit, right? Should be able to handle that. Healthy, fit dog, right? We have an up dog event next weekend. You want to go play that up dog event. Maybe you'll take out freestyle and you'll just play games, right? If there's a re-injury that weekend, what does that tell you and what should you do? That's the part that gets me because I see re-injuries and I don't see an adjustment in how it's handled.
So when we talk about, say, just a muscle strain, there's minor, medium, and severe. A minor strain, in all honesty, even with a lot of rehab, the dog should probably have a couple weeks of healing time. When it becomes a major strain, minimum of 12 weeks, and that's not even including like a real tear, just a minimum style strain that the dog is lame for a couple days in a row, that's at least a 12-week heal.
So tell me what a define heal. Is that like playing Frisbee casually in my yard? Is that going on running bike? Is that? So
yeah, everything has to start with really complete rest. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in cage rest. I call it cage rest. There's been tons of studies that have proven that for every day of complete and total inactivity, it takes you 3 days for the entire body to get back to its previous condition. So when we talk about bed rest in humans, if you bed rest for 7 days, it would take you 21 days to recover. And anyone who, does any kind of conditioning on themselves, this should be readily apparent. Mm-hmm. Dogs are no different. Their physiology is similar enough that complete rest, in my mind, does not necessarily mean a cage 24/7, but it does mean no jumping, no leaping, minimal stairs, no on and off the couch, no jumping at the window at the chippies, and certainly no loose leash in the yard. So a good solid rest means if the dog is not obviously lame, you can take them for short walks, sniff walks, not hikes. On leash. If you have a dog that you can't control in the house because, something outside is way more exciting, I tell people put the leash on their belt and the dog can't go more than 2 or 3 feet from them to truly protect the shoulder, the ilio, whatever the injury is, because anything explosive is going to set you back to time zero. Yep. So you have to avoid those explosive activities. And like for the minor things where the dog is, lame 2 steps, we don't talk about this degree of rest. But if your dog takes 2 lame steps, you need to take a step back and really look at what you've been doing and what can you avoid for the next couple weeks. If you absolutely have to play, up dog a week from now, it's critically important, then bear in mind, whatever you do on that day, you may be going from the 3-week rest time to the 12-week rest time. You may just extend the time it's going to take your dog to recover. And that's fine too. Like I've had those strategies before from finals as my dog's getting ready to retire, where the vet was like, all right, just keep her on Rimadyl for a couple weeks and finish out the important event that you have. It's not going to make her any worse to do that. Right. So like there are ways you can work with your vet, like to have something critically important to keep your dog safe. But there is extra recovery that happens after that you have to consider. That you absolutely have to take into consideration, because that's where the chronic injuries that honestly never heal. I mean, when I first learned about iliopsoas injuries, everyone told me it took 9 months, 18 months to heal. Well, not if you can achieve that complete 3 months properly. Yeah. If you can achieve that complete rest initially right up front, it does not take that long. That's 3 months. And then finding a good body worker that can get in there and help, relieve the strain on that muscle, because it is in spasm, guaranteed. And not everyone knows how to do that, but there's enough of us. We're around. There's a few in every state.
So I have a question again. Again, my questions are probably going
I
to
like
be
your simpler questions. Yeah.
simpler questions here. So I know that like I always some of the things that you said, Kathy, were relating to like what happens with humans, right? And so sometimes I'm out there playing, especially freestyle, and I might tweak my ankle or just turn a certain way, and I'm sore for a little bit. Like I've tweaked something. I know I've tweaked something, right? But I continue to play because it's freestyle, darn it, and I gotta finish my round or whatever, and then maybe that happens on Saturday or Sunday, and by late Sunday, Monday, I'm fine. I might even be fine later that day. So I guess my question is, sometimes I'm playing my dogs and I'll notice that maybe they landed weird or they turned really quick or something, and they just kind of like limp for a little bit, but then I maybe pull them from that game and I pull them out of the car later to just kind of see how they're doing, and they seem like they're trotting okay. They seem like they're fine. Um, do you think if that happens, should I just be like, all right, I'm done for the day. Let me just reevaluate this dog tomorrow? Or would I handle it like if it was me and I was feeling okay, I would play. I mean, of course, we can't
So,
ask our dogs, are you feeling okay?
yeah, because as soon as the adrenaline kicks in, as soon as they see the frisbee in your hand, they're like, "Whoa,
They're
nothing
going.
wrong here.
Yep.
Nothing to see here." So I think the scenario you just gave me is actually what I will tell a lot of people. Yeah, your dog landed funny. I could go over the dog right here in front of you, and we're not going to find anything because adrenaline is running, the muscle hasn't stiffened up yet, etc. Put the dog away, give it an hour to rest and relax, and give that muscle a chance to get sore. When you pull the dog out after that hour, if they're even remotely limpy, in my world, they're done. If they look like absolutely nothing, then I would say, yeah, maybe they, it was a stinger. Maybe they stubbed their toe, and we've all done that. You can stub your toe and be totally fine. But if they're limpy an hour later, that to me is the test that says you're done for the day.
Okay, perfect. That's a good one.
That reminded me of something I saw last year that I wanted to ask about. So let's say that you suspect that your dog might be like having some arthritis or something as they get older at 8 or 9, and they do come out limpy, but as they start to move around and warm up, they no longer show any signs of that. What would you do in that scenario?
Okay, so one of the things I always tell people is, you always have to make room in your mind for changes as they age. And arthritis in sports dogs is pretty much going to happen, just like arthritis in sports humans is going to happen. So the things that I tell people with the dogs that, get the diagnosis to make sure that it's arthritis. Let's start there. So get the x-rays, get the, the veterinarian that can do the body work that can confirm that that's what's going on. And if that's what's going on, then how do you modify to adjust to the dog's new condition? Yep. And I honestly see no real problem with throwing a dog on any kind of an NSAID as long as they tolerate it well, and you can do low-level NSAID. Prepping for game day may mean, right? Prepping for game day, may mean that you dial back on some of the things that you were doing so that they've got the resources to get through the weekend. Arthritis, like literally if you open up the textbook in veterinary medicine that says, what does arthritis look like? You described it. They get out of their crate or they get up, they're a little bit stiff, maybe a 1 or 2 limpy steps, and then they warm out of it. Mm-hmm. As long as they warm out of it, that's great. If they get worse as you go on, that's when you have to readdress and say, one, this is not just arthritis, there's something else going on. And, like getting that physical exam that's to the muscle, which your average veterinarian, one, doesn't have the time for during their
appointments. I was going to say, that's not a regular vet visit. Like
it really isn't. Yeah. Your regular vet visit can do the x-rays and, they can even send those off to radiologists and say, yeah, I think I see a little spicule in that shoulder that, now your dog has shoulder arthritis. But their ability to go through each tissue, each muscle, each joint is pretty limited, not just from time, but also from experience.
Wait, that's not what I'm sure everybody's trained that in veterinary medicine, right? But if that's not your focus, it's hard to have that much
Yeah,
like breadth
exactly.
of knowledge on everything. As a general vet, you have to handle everything from multiple different types of animals. Like there's no way.
And we now have, sports medicine is now a board certified specialty. So if you're lucky enough to have someone who's board certified in your state, they should have the hands that can go through your dog. But let's go back to that novice thing, Jack, because this is another, I won't say it's a pet peeve of mine, but it's a message for sure. Get your dog used to body work. Get your dog used to cooperative care. Get your dog used to having someone getting their hands on him, because I can't tell you how many times someone has come to me and I can't even lay hands on the dog and they're pacing in circles around my exam room and never actually lay down on the bed with me.
Yeah.
I can't help that dog if it's not used to someone manipulating it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had dogs that just don't tolerate it. Like Leap and Mayhem just didn't, like they had to be muzzled.
Yeah.
And
And
held
that takes away a lot of the information that we can glean through our fingers. Is this muscle tense because the dog is tense, or is this muscle tense because it's actually stiff?
Yeah, so there's value there in the person. That's something that I've had to do at times, work with the body worker to get feedback from them on how I can do what they're trying to do that the dog won't let me do, and then work on that at home, like around their hips or something if they're extra sensitive there. Ask your body worker, like, is there something I can do at home every night or something for 5 minutes to help work through this if your dog is sensitive to cooperative care? But that's one of the things we cover in Foundation for Disc Dog Man is body handling. You want them to, you want to be able to pick them up. You want to be able to grab their collar really hard. That way, if you ever have to grab them in a danger situation, it's not the first time they've had their collar grabbed like that. You want to be able to shake them up and twist them around and shove them so that they that kind of physical handling, and then give them cookies, and then they think that's a good experience, right? And again, that's one thing I don't really think about. I don't really think about other people when I have new dogs. I don't really think about other people handling them that way. So that would be something. I obviously work on my cooperative care.
Right.
I don't really think about somebody else doing that until they actually get in that
situation. I mean, to get the best exam, the dog has to cooperate.
Well, and I think I'll just speak for myself. I think about that, and I do that when my dogs are young. Like when they're puppies, it's like, here, hold this dog, twist this dog around, like I'm going to hold its paws and play with, different parts of its body so that it's comfortable with all of that. I mean, I can remember when Ferris was young, we did a ton of that and handed him around to people, and he was much more comfortable when he was young. Nowadays, if it depends on who I would hand him to.
Me. No,
so I think maybe it's not something we should stop doing when they're young puppies, and maybe still like have some things that kind of keep that comfortability, I guess, of other people doing that work.
Well, there's a lot of things we do to socialize our puppies that we kind of fade off as we get into doing other things, and then it comes back and it bites us that, we forgot to reintroduce them to people with funny hats.
Right.
We did it when they were puppies, and we forgot to do it when they were adults.
This brings up something interesting. So let's say we're doing the cooperative care when they're puppies, right? If I needed to have like 3 things that as a practitioner, you want a dog to be able to have in order to get effective body work from another person. Let's say there's 3 skills I need to work on for my dog. One of them is laying calmly on a bed while someone else is talking to them or touching them.
Lying flat.
This is great. I don't even know what these things are. Let's hear it.
Yeah. Lying flat would be a big one, right?
Lying flat with somebody else behind you and touching you is one.
Yes.
And what else?
Being able to flip over and do the other side.
Okay.
And then literally being able to touch every piece and part. Because some dogs are great about, it's okay to touch my rear feet, but for the love of God, don't go anywhere near my front feet. Or you can touch all of that, but don't touch my tail. I'd say, the third thing would be touching every part. Because I will manipulate tails. That's a chiropractic move.
It is, yeah.
And some dogs are like, what are you doing back there?
All right. So
where are your hands?
Laying down, being able to be touched by a person behind you.
I feel like that's relatable to humans too.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't think any of us are going to practice that though, Jack. We're just going to be traumatized when we have to be in that situation.
Exactly.
But as usual, we're looking to do better for our dogs than we do for ourselves. So
always.
Jack, do you want to ask another question? Because I'm more chatty on this one than you for sure.
No, I've been listening in and I feel like I'm learning a lot. This is awesome.
Good.
So let's see. I'm trying to see. We've gone all around here. So Dre, why don't you ask that question that we were talking about before
About structure?
before we started, and you'll be able to ask that better than I.
All right. So one of the questions that was on here was originally a cat question. It was about structure. So I know what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a sport dog structurally on their body. And there's also things that I would want to avoid in their structure. So as a professional, if you were going to look at a sport dog, what are some things you'd be looking for in their structure? And what are some red flags that if you saw, you'd be like, nope, that dog's not meant to be a disc dog?
So if we're talking about, we'll talk about disc in particular and sports where dogs have to be, leapy,
Sleeping, yeah.
jumping. I guess the first thing I look at is height to weight ratio. So how tall is the dog? How much does it weigh? And what you want is a 2-to-1. So 40-pound dog, 20 inches tall. That height to weight ratio, weight to height ratio. Sorry, I said it backwards. That's pretty critical for just being able to lift up off the ground, come back down, and be able to support yourself appropriately without incurring injury just from being too heavy. So that's kind of a big one. Okay. The other thing I look at
that was at the shoulders, Kathy, obviously.
Yes. I'm sorry. You measure from the withers, unlike those crazy flyball people that do some other weird measurement that I don't understand.
I think it's the length of their front leg or something.
Yeah. And they put misdemeanor in a taller category because of it, which cracks me up because she's like 12 inches tall. Yeah. So the other thing then is I will look at like hind limb and front limb structure, the angulation. You want the front legs to have a nice, they call it shoulder layback, which is from, the scapula to the humerus to the forelimb. You want that to have a pleasing angulation. If you want specifics, usually around 30 degrees. And the reason for that is you want room between the scapula and the humerus for there to be room for the triceps, because the triceps is one of the major muscles that when dogs land, it provides a cushion to the joints. So that angulation is pretty important. Dogs that are very straight in front incur injuries at a much higher rate. Going down the front leg, then you want their front paws to be relatively straight.
Not easty-westy.
A little easty-westy, but a lot easty-westy is absolutely asking for injuries, for sure. And it's not that there's dogs out there that aren't playing with some of these structural defects, but if that ends up being the dog you have, then you have to address it within what you're asking the dog to do. Yep. So some of these smaller, we won't name any breeds, really crooked front leg dogs, it's not that they can't play Frisbee, but maybe they shouldn't be doing a lot of vaults. Maybe they shouldn't be going off the ground. And God bless Updog for allowing rollers, because those are the kind of dogs that do great, staying on the ground.
Yeah.
So front angulation is very important, that shoulder layback kind of thing. When we get into the hind limb, again, we want a nice angular rear end. Straighter rear ends tend to have more of I think a torquing kind of injury. They don't
lower back type of.
Yeah, they get a lot of lumbar issues. Excessive angulation, again, we won't name any breeds, but they're not as fast. They don't have the ground speed. They don't have the turning radius that a dog with less angulation has. So there's a sweet spot for sure between too much and not enough. But again, some of the rear end angulation we can actually manipulate by muscle training, by finding the imbalances. Some of that angulation just comes with the breed or the mixed breed, and you just have to address it.
So for the front, we really just have what we have. And for the rear, you can do some physical therapy stuff to help compensate for a weak element one way or the other.
And when we go back to that concept about, as dogs age and they change, this is a very common old age change, is those hind limbs look straighter as they lose a little bit of muscle mass. And, as they get into their geriatric years, older dogs do look straighter in the rear end than they did when they were puppies. We can address that through physical therapy and through some muscle balance training and get some of that angulation back if it was there previously. So I feel like we can play a little bit more with the hind end than we can the front end.
And what do you think
comes to structure?
Loin?
Sorry?
What do you think about like the length of their body or length of loin?
So length of loin is really tricky because both have their advantages.
Yeah.
I personally like dogs that have a little bit more length of loin, but I don't do a lot of twisty things.
Yeah, you like the speed.
I like the speed. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I like
like
the
the
twisty
speed.
things. I like the shorter loin.
And
So
so a shorter loin would provide the dog with less turning radius, and I'll go back to like agility where we really want dogs to have super tight turns. That short loin is going to get in the way, and they're going to be bar knockers if they're of any size. The longer loin gives you more speed and a little bit more, less speed, but a little more flexibility.
yeah,
I have
interesting.
a question from the audience.
Good.
Hi, Kat.
I didn't say it was Kat.
This is
Could be
Kat's
anybody.
question,
I have a
technically.
large studio audience back here that you can't see.
Most of them are dogs.
So yeah, true. So structurally, what makes for the massive leaper?
Really big butt. A really big butt. I
Don't get me
cannot
wrong,
lie.
Aussies, right?
Sorry?
Aussies typically have that really nice muscled rear end, and usually I didn't get an Aussie that jumped, but other people do.
Yes. Yes. I think
mean,
that's one of the
makes-
reasons why, as a breed, they tend to are well represented in Frisbee.
Yeah.
Is they have that ability to leap. Most of them stay within that 2-to-1 weight to height ratio. And they've got, most of them honestly have lovely rear ends.
Mhm.
Lovely, as far as angulation is concerned. And that's where that power can come from.
Yep.
That's what I always used to say about Ferris when he was younger, that like he had like
But
just so much muscle back there. It was crazy. I mean, he still does, but not like when he was younger.
yeah, and Freebird has all that muscle, but she's overly angulated in her rear. And so she just has straight end speed and cornering. She can't jump, but she's very strong in her rear. So it's very fascinating to see the little structural changes that make them better in one way or another way. So Kathy, let's simplify this for the newer people in the sport or newer people to dogs. If they're looking for a dog and they want good structure for dog frisbee and they don't have the knowledge to really be able to look and see what shoulder angulation and rear angulation, length of loin, all that kind of stuff, what would you say somebody could just like have a picture in their mind to compare to for a dog to make sure that they're just not getting something that's like a dumpster fire of a structural dog? Like just avoid the dumpster fire. You know what I mean?
I would get
Nobody
I would
wants
get a
that
picture
experience.
of a dog that, on the internet, there's plenty of them out there that talk about, some of this stuff. And one of the things, pictures, like for me, when I'm looking at a dog, I want the little dots at the top of the shoulder and on the elbow and on the wrist. Like I want those dots so I can follow my lines. There's no reason you can't do that when you're checking out a dog. Use your hands and go top of the shoulder to the point of the shoulder, point of the shoulder.
Even.
What does that look like? And get the picture in your mind. It's also pretty easy to do a quick internet search and look at pictures of dogs that have, like not enough angulation in the front end, aka terriers. And it's not that terriers make bad frisbee dogs. It's just I would keep that in mind with what I'm asking my dog to do.
Yep.
A lot of people that start frisbee start it with whatever's sitting on their lap.
Yep.
And it may not have perfect structure. Chances are it won't. Very few dogs do. It's just a matter of incorporating that into what you're doing with your dog to make sure that you're addressing it, or at least acknowledging that there may be days that those dogs with the really crooked wrists are going to have a gimpy day because they landed funny, and that wrist does not have the ability to spring the way a dog with a straighter wrist does.
Yeah, it's that compression, right? And the ability to absorb shock.
Yeah, that's what the triceps is for. And if you look at a really straight dog, one of the things we talk about is just by virtue of the math and the angles, there isn't even enough room for a triceps to be big and bulgy. So a little bit more angulation just gives more room for more bulk, and more bulk gives more cushion. Right.
Well, Dre, we are 48 minutes in, and I am disappointed that you have not brought up freestyle. But
I did actually talk about freestyle injuries.
We talked about injuries.
Well, I mean, that wasn't really. I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna bring it to freestyle and
all right,
say
bring it to freestyle.
Kathy has said multiple times now, like it doesn't mean like we've talked about maybe injuries that might happen with the dog, or we've talked about the structure of the dogs now, and like keeping in mind that not every dog is going to be able to do the same exact thing. So you can't just watch another team and go, I want my dog to do that or whatever, because
Right.
maybe you as a human or your dog as a dog is not set up to do
not the
that.
best thing for
You
him.
might be able to put the foundation down to get your dog to do that, but that's what's so great about some of the games in disc dogging is that there are multiple strategies, multiple ways that you can get points. Kathy mentioned rollers. Freestyle is freestyle. Like you can do whatever you want. So if you have a dog that maybe shouldn't be doing those high vaults or crazy twisty flips or something like that, you can do other things to highlight what your dog can do. I know I started out, just like Kathy said, I started out with the dog that I had, right? The dog that was on my lap. And sometimes those dogs are not like 100% on everything. And so you just have to showcase the things that they can do.
Well, I'm really new at freestyle, really, really, really new. And the dog I had when I decided I was going to try this was 9 years old.
Yep.
So did I ask him to do a bunch of vaults and everything? No, I didn't even bother trying to train it because I'm not going to ask my 9-year-old dogs to vault off my back or to flip or do any of those things. So yeah, the majority of our stuff was groundwork.
Yeah.
And, we're in the bottom half of the pack at UpDiff, but I still got to go out there and play with my dog and showcase what he is good at.
Mhm.
Right. And you can be creative. You can, come up with different things. Like you can find your points in different places.
Well,
All
some
right.
very nice judge gave me a lot of points on safety.
There you go.
Yeah,
I
see?
mean, there's no reason that after this conversation that everybody shouldn't be getting a 5 on care of dog, right, Dre?
There you
agree.
go.
I want to ask one more question, and then we can move on to time warpy stuff. Are you ready, Jack?
Go ahead.
All right. So, in your opinion, are there specific causes of injury in the sport of disc dogging? Like, what do you see most common? And then how would you avoid those?
And I will say, in the scope of my practice, I see probably fewer disc dogs than other sports we won't mention. And when I do see them, they do tend to be back injuries. So that kind of goes back to the twisting, the turning, and I guess it's going to end up being a combination of, maybe it's the conditions you were playing in that day, or maybe you're just not a great thrower, or your dog really hasn't learned the mechanics of jumping properly, grabbing the disc and coming back down, hopefully on 4 feet. So somewhere in there, it's a little bit of training on you, a little bit of training on the dog. But if it's super slippery, I probably wouldn't ask my dog to do a lot of vaults or anything really high off the ground, not just freestyle type stuff, but like, those really high, long throws where my dog has at greater risk of slipping. If it's really muddy, I would probably avoid the long stuff where my dog's going to do stupid things. And we won't name any names, but, my young dog Zydeco, she was 2 before I started doing any distance with her because she's reckless and doesn't understand the mechanics of landing properly. She's a perfect example of that. Our first UpDiff was all rollers because I didn't trust her.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that you alluded to there is like, the capacity of the dog. And of course, when somebody's new getting into the sport, their dog isn't going to be fit enough. It's going to be one of the ones you were talking about where they're on one leg, slightly off balance.
Yeah.
Like that's just what's going to happen because they don't have the conditioning. They don't even know what they're doing yet, right?
Yeah.
They're new people. So like some of that is going to happen. I think the real takeaway from that is people learning to look when they see the dog is slightly off and giving proper rest. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And it's just so hard when you only have one dog, man, or even
and getting outside help.
And you want to
not trying to do it alone. Get some outside help. Find a body worker. Find a sports medicine vet. We've got lots of toys at our disposal that can help with recovery. It may not make recovery faster, but it'll make recovery better.
Mm-hmm.
It'll
like heal and then
they'll actually heal and the muscle will
again.
Heal appropriately, maybe less scarring if there's been some tears.
Less arthritis
because arthritis is going to happen. Yeah. And honestly, whoever figures out how to avoid or get rid of arthritis is going to be a gabillionaire.
Killed by the government. Cancer. It's like cancer. If they figure out that's taking too much money away from our medical system, that person's going to disappear off a bridge somewhere. All right. Well, thank you, Kathy. I feel like we could talk about this all day. I
Absolutely
could talk about it all day.
Thank
Jack's
you,
still
Kathy.
awake.
I learned a lot and took many notes.
Yay! The teacher took notes.
Hey. So I'm feeling a little time warpy. How you feeling, Jack?
Yep, let's do it. I'll take the first question. You set the timer. Kathy, don't think too much about any of these answers. They're just silly, goofy questions, as you know.
All right, ready. Are you ready, Kathy? So much pressure.
The pressure is awesome.
All right. Ready, set, go.
Kathy, what's your favorite room in your house?
My bedroom.
If you had unlimited money, what would you likely spend it on?
My dogs.
What's one thing on your bucket list?
Oh, it was Frisbee Freestyle. Now I have to come up with a new one.
Good job.
What's your favorite disc dog to throw? Dog disc to throw?
Oh, any brand new disc. Brand new.
That's a good answer.
Absolutely.
All right. Turkey or ham for the holidays?
Turkey.
Favorite up dog game?
Frizzagility.
Ooh.
What is your best trivia category?
Oh, science, biology.
Would you rather watch figure skating or hockey? 12 seconds.
Ooh, figure skating.
Favorite carnival ride or game?
Tilt-a-whirl.
What's the last candy bar you've ever eaten? 3 seconds.
Mars.
Oh, you did it with 1 second left.
Time
I did it!
complete.
A
I
Mars
passed the
bar?
test.
I haven't had a Mars bar in like a long time.
Yeah, me
You were
neither.
so worried.
I'm kind of off candy, but that was probably the last one I ate. Yeah.
You could still
Okay.
love it and be off candy. You know, it's a wise choice to stay away from the hydrogenated oils these days, but you could still love the Mars bars for your youth.
I can love them from afar.
Love them from afar. You know, the Mars bars we probably had as kids were entirely ingredient different than they are now. So I
I'm
think
sure. I'm
your
sure everything
childhood
is.
Mars bars were probably pretty okay to eat.
Even Twinkies are different than when we were kids.
Yep. Oh, thank you so much, Kathy, for joining us today. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we are very grateful for that.
Yes,
Thanks for the
Kathy.
invite. I really love sharing this information with people because it's important. You know,
Well, we may
I
call
changed
on
my
you
life to
again
do
for
it.
another topic. We would love to have you back.
So
Oh, that would be fun.
if you guys have questions out there specifically about sports medicine for the dogs, like comment on this thread, put some questions on there. We would love to have Kathy back with some more of the questions that you guys want to know. She is a wealth of knowledge and she's an updogger, so we're gonna use that while we have her and share that with the community and try and keep everybody's dogs as healthy and give you as much longevity in this sport as possible, because you know it's really nice to see those 10, 11, 12-year-old dogs out there still playing and having a great time.
Lanyap.
Yeah, Langyap is out there jamming.
Absolutely.
I didn't ask many questions, so can I ask one final question?
Go for it.
All right. So as Kat would tell you, I am somewhat of a border collie in terms of like, I just always have to be doing stuff. I don't know when to stop working, blah, blah, blah. When I take my dog outside to play, like, what's a decent amount of time for me to be playing with my dog and working on like Frisbee skills and things like that? Thanks.
Well, the ratio would be what sport are you doing? Frisbee. Yeah. Most Frisbee events are, 60 seconds, 75 seconds. I would say if I use the formula that I use for other sports, I would do that twice. And then I would take a break and then maybe twice again and take a break. Do other things, let the body do other things, and that'd probably be it for training, for skill training, right?
10 minutes or less.
Yeah, 10 minutes or less for this particular sport.
That's good.
All right, great. That's a good answer. I'm sure that goes along with what Kat's always trying to keep me to.
Yeah, the number one enemy is chronic overuse and repetition.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm just going to say this because maybe it'll help somebody else too. Maybe I'm the only one like this. but maybe I should set a timer because it's never in my head that I think I've gone that long. But then I look down and I'm like, wow, I've been playing for like 14 minutes already or whatever. And then I'm like, okay, I need to stop. But I didn't realize it. So
Isn't
maybe
that the
setting a
ultimate secret to
timer.
multiple dogs?
Yeah, right.
That's why we all get more than one dogs, because we're not ready to be done, but our dogs should be done. So let's get another dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Best
for
number
those
is
of us out
N+1.
Yeah, for those of us out there that only have one or two dogs, like you can still do this with just one or two dogs. Like work your dog for 2 minutes and then practice some of your throws and then go pick up those discs, practice your throws again, go pick up the discs, and then bring the dog back out. So y'all should be practicing your floaters and your throws anyway. I am definitely one of those people that'd be rather throwing to my dog. But if we're trying to create proper rest and not overuse, then give your dog like go to dog stuff, man. You do a 2 minutes of something, go to dog stuff, go sniff, go to your stuff, go pick up your disc, practice your throws, and then get your dog back in once they've recovered. And a cupped tongue is another good thing to check if the fatigue of your dog.
Excellent.
If you have a cupped tongue, you can pour water in their tongue and it's going to stay in that little cup on the end of their tongue. They need to cool off and rest. So that's
Tried that,
always
it falls right out the side.
yeah. And if they bite their tongue, it's usually from swelling and being overheated. And you know, sometimes in Texas,
Yes.
that's 1 minute. So
Yes.
like I have to
Yeah.
gauge my working sessions here based on the heat and the cup of their tongue. So it's not always
Yes.
physically what they're going to show you in their body. Sometimes it's just heat resilience too. Or I mean, I guess I don't know what the problems are in excessive cold. I think it's just properly warming the dog up so that they don't get strains and stuff from moving when they're really cold. But for heat, for sure, like the session is not making it 10 minutes, 8 or 9 months out of the year here. We're at 5 minutes or less just because of the heat.
Because of the heat. Yeah. Good points. Very good points. We don't
All right,
worry
well,
about excessive heat
thank
up here
you.
too often.
Thank you, Kathy, for the answer, and
You're
Dre
welcome.
for chiming in on it as well. Kathy, thanks for being with us. And we hope that we see all of you guys soon on an Updog field somewhere. Up Diff is coming up soon. Like, I mean, it's going to be here in 3 months. So I will definitely hope to see a lot of our listeners there. Dre, in the meantime, what should we be doing?
You should be kind to each other.
And be kind to our dogs. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm playing the part of the novice person that doesn't know anything.